One thing is certain, DreamWorks villains are all complex, and in some way, some become fan favorites while others are hated for their actions or personalities. Here's a ranking of the most beloved and most hated villains from DreamWorks. Starting with a villain who, despite being the very personification of the end, has won many hearts and sparked a reverent fear in fans. Death from Puss in Boots 2. This sinister wolf is not your typical villain. He represents the inevitable consequence, a relentless hunter who emerges to punish Puss for recklessly wasting his 9 lives.
I was there to witness all of them. Each frivolous. And because Puss in Boots laughs in the face of death.
His presence is felt from the start, subtle but impactful. After the epic battle against the sleeping giant in Del Mar, where Puss in Boots celebrates another victory as a hero, Death makes his first subtle appearance. Amidst the crowd applauding, he quickly emerges, silently observing Puss, a mere glimpse that, to the sharp-eyed, already felt like a forewarning. An appearance that at first could seem like a simple Easter egg, but one that carries the weight of destiny. The real terror sets in when Puss, after discovering he's down to his last life, seeks solace at the bottom of a glass in a tavern. It's here that Death appears once again, initially as a mysterious bounty hunter. But what truly sends a chill down the spine is his iconic whistle, an eerie melody that has since become synonymous with dread and awe. With a direct challenge, the wolf confronts him. During their duel, he wounds Puss with a cut on the face, and for the first time, the legendary Puss in Boots feels true fear. This trauma runs so deep that it makes him bury his cape and boots, seeking to hide from the inevitable. Later, in the Cave of Lost Souls deep within the dark forest, Puss finds himself alone, separated from Kitty and Perito. There, he's tormented by mocking reflections of his 8 wasted lives. It is in this moment of vulnerability that Death reveals himself in all his terrifying glory. I'm not a bounty hunter. I am Death, and I've come for you.
Death! And I don't mean it metaphorically, or rhetorically, or poetically, or theoretically, or in any other fancy way. I'm Death.
The revelation is brutal, and Puss, still not ready to face his fate, flees in desperation, revealing his vulnerability in the face of inevitability. The final confrontation occurs at the Wishing Star. During the chaotic battle over the wish, Death, with his cunning and power, traps Puss in a circle of fire, isolating him from everyone. He pressures him, not only physically but psychologically, to use the wish cowardly or face him head-on. The duel is intense, a deadly dance where Puss fights with fear, but also with a new, fierce determination. For the first time, he doesn't run. He truly faces death, accepting his fate, but fighting for his last life with renewed courage. When Puss, in a moment of pure bravery and wisdom, disarms Death and shows that he now values his life and the friendships he's made, Death recognizes the profound change. Although frustrated by having his hunt ruined, he retreats, leaving behind the haunting words that echo in fans' minds. We'll meet again.
You know we will meet again, right?
Sí, hasta la muerte.
And with that, he disappears, leaving behind a transformed Puss and an audience in awe of the complexity and impact of this villain who personifies the end but, paradoxically, taught Puss how to truly live. His imposing presence, his chilling whistle, and his relentless philosophy have solidified him as one of DreamWorks' most beloved and respected villains, an unforgettable mark in animation. While Death is beloved, the Chameleon doesn't receive the same treatment. The Chameleon is easily the most forgettable villain in the Kung Fu Panda franchise. Unfortunately, this character quickly became one of the most hated by fans, and it's not hard to understand why. She is, in essence, a shadow of what we've seen before. A pale copy of Master Kai, the formidable antagonist from Kung Fu Panda 3, who already explored the idea of stealing chi from other masters.
Set another on that path.
Then I will find him.
This lack of innovation in her design puts her at a disadvantage, making her presence feel redundant and less impactful. The Chameleon is the main antagonist of the film, a sorceress with supernatural shape-shifting powers capable of turning into any animal, imitating appearances and voices, and copying kung fu abilities from past masters.
Stop the chameleon!
Oh!
Shen?
Her motivation comes from a past of rejection. She was dismissed from several kung fu schools for being considered too small or of low status. This frustration turned into ambition and a desire for power, driving her to obsessively seek recognition. However, this justification falls apart because the Kung Fu Panda universe is full of masters of all sizes, like Master Shifu, proving that stature doesn't limit mastery. This inconsistency makes her quest for power seem selfish and illogical, undermining any empathy for her character. And it's precisely this flawed motivation that reflects in her actions throughout the movie, reinforcing the negative perception and making her even more detestable. She manipulates Jen, her pupil, into stealing Poe's Staff of Wisdom, an important artifact that allows access to the spiritual realm and enables her to steal the abilities of deceased masters. In my opinion, it would have been much more interesting if the Chameleon had been Jen from the start, manipulating everything herself, which would have made her a much more cunning villain. However, it's understandable that the narrative needed a new Dragon Warrior apprentice, which is why the characters were separated. Her tactic of impersonating Tai Lung to trick Poe, then using the forms of other iconic masters like Lord Shen and Kai to fight, only highlights her lack of originality and the perception that she's appropriating the legacy of others. In fact, the film leans heavily on previous villains to hold up the plot, lacking originality in its story. In the climax, her transformation into a monstrous chimera, combining parts of various masters, is a desperate attempt for power that ironically makes her even more generic. After her defeat, the Chameleon is taken to the spiritual realm by Tai Lung, an ending that for many only reinforces the idea that she failed to stand out. She represents the frustration of wasted potential, an antagonist who got lost in the shadow of her predecessors and a flawed internal logic. On the other hand, Lord Farquaad is somehow loved by Shrek fans. Lord Maximus Farquaad, the tyrannical ruler of Duloc in the first Shrek film. Farquaad is a character who, despite his villainy, has earned a special place in fans' hearts, not just because of his short stature. He is the embodiment of vanity and authoritarianism, obsessed with control and an aesthetic perfection that leads him to exile all fairy tale creatures from his kingdom, deeming them a disruption to his vision of order. His search for the perfect queen leads him to consult the magic mirror, through which he chooses Princess Fiona and organizes a tournament for knights to rescue her.
Okay, number 3!
Lord Farquaad, you've chosen Princess Fiona.
He even makes a deal with Shrek, asking the ogre to rescue Fiona in exchange for clearing his swamp of magical creatures. Farquaad is a villain who, with his grandiose posture and harsh methods, represents the imposition of a rigid order and the rejection of difference, completely contrasting with the message of acceptance in Shrek. But what really elevated him to the status of beloved villain was his ability to surprise with subtle, unexpected humor. The scene where he lies in bed, watching Fiona through the magic mirror and covered by the sheets, says, "Show me again," is a brilliant example.
Show me the princess. Perfect.
This scene, with its double meaning, went unnoticed by children, but was recognized as a touch of adult humor hidden by DreamWorks, making it one of the reasons he's so beloved. His appearance, with heavy royal attire, opulence, and symbols of power, reinforces his narcissism and his relentless pursuit of an impeccable image. In the end, his plans are ruined when Fiona transforms into an ogre, and shocked, he tries to react, only to be devoured by the dragon, marking the end of his direct involvement. However, his legacy of humor and his portrayal of intolerance keep him alive in the fans' memory, making him an unforgettable and, yes, beloved villain. While Lord Farquaad is beloved by fans, Drago Bloodvist is despised. Drago is the archetype of the cruel, vengeful warlord obsessed with control, and his one-dimensionality firmly places him among the most hated villains by fans, who expected more depth from an antagonist in such a rich franchise. His past, marked by a dragon attack that cost him his family and an arm, is the root of his hatred and fear. However, instead of seeking coexistence, this trauma fuels his ambition to subjugate dragons, turning them into mere weapons. His methods are brutal. He controls dragons through his Bewilderbeast, an alpha dragon that hypnotizes others with sound waves, using intimidation and brute force, never emotional bonds or respect.
No! Let me show you.
Drago leads both human troops and captured dragons in relentless military strategies, severely punishing any failure from his subordinates. He is portrayed as insane, remorseless, and incapable of dialogue, seeing dragons only as tools of power, making him a relentless adversary, but a lackluster one. In the film, Drago initially operates from the shadows, hiring hunters like Eret to capture dragons. His threat escalates as he puts Berk and Valka's dragon sanctuary at risk, showing his boundless ambition. He takes control of the original Bewilderbeast Alpha, killing it and becoming the new Alpha, commanding numerous dragons. This allows him to attack Berk, temporarily control Toothless, and tragically cause the death of Stoic, Hiccup's father, an event that shocked many viewers and sparked intense debates about its narrative necessity.
Hiccup! Son! Dad! No!
In the final battle on Berk, the conflict between free and controlled dragons culminates in Drago's defeat and the collapse of his reign, but the scars of his actions remain. Despite his epic presence and the impact of his actions, Drago faces significant criticism. His motivation is seen as underexplored and one-dimensional, a man who lost his family, hates dragons, and seeks power, and that's it. His view of control versus freedom is presented too simply, with no depth that could spark empathy or a deeper questioning of his choices. The character's late arrival in the film is also a drawback, making his presence feel forced and out of place, as if certain subplots were adjusted just to include him as the main villain. This contributes to the impression that he was added more to elevate the threat than to establish himself as a deep and memorable antagonist with a well-defined character arc. Additionally, Drago is criticized for his lack of distinct personality. Compared to villains like Vigo from the Dragon series or Grimmel from the third film, he is seen as more brutish and less psychologically strategic. To many fans, Drago is just the bad guy who attacks with dragons, with no internal layers or real dilemmas, as his insanity and cruelty are portrayed superficially, without much depth. This lack of complexity leads to unfavorable comparisons with Grimmel, who is praised for his intelligence, subtlety, and his more direct connection with Hiccup, making that confrontation feel more significant. There are also critiques of the internal logic of the narrative. Many wonder how Drago was able to control so many dragons and dominate the Bewilderbeast without clear explanations, which weakens the construction of his power. His control power, through his alpha dragon, is shown effectively but lacks detailed limitations or consequences, reducing the credibility for those analyzing the plot more critically. Stoic's death, though impactful, is seen by some as a forced dramatic twist, lacking the gradual development it needed, reinforcing the idea that Drago was a plot device to increase the threat, rather than a memorable villain in his own right. This solidifies him as one of the most hated villains in DreamWorks history. If there's a villain who's well-crafted and beloved for it, that villain is Megamind. Megamind isn't just a villain. He's a complex anti-hero, charismatic, and above all, human in his flaws and evolution, which has solidified him as one of DreamWorks' fan favorites. His journey mirrors the quest for identity and purpose, something that resonates with many, making him an animation icon. His origin story immediately invites empathy and understanding. Sent to Earth as a baby, he lands near a high-security prison, growing up among criminals without the warmth of a family or proper guidance.
Dream life filled with luxury. Apparently, no big deal. A much different fate awaited me.
In contrast, his rival, Metro Man, is welcomed into a wealthy mansion. At school, Megamind suffers constant bullying and rejection, which almost inevitably pushes him into the role of villain. Having never received any direction from his parents, he embraces this identity, living in constant conflict with Metro Man, who becomes his sole purpose in life. His journey of abandonment, rejection, and the desperate search for identity resonates deeply with the audience, who see their own insecurities reflected in his struggle to find his place in the world. The turning point comes when, unexpectedly, Megamind defeats Metro Man. But victory doesn't bring the satisfaction he expected. Without a hero or a worthy opponent, his villainous life loses its meaning. This existential crisis humanizes him even further, showing that behind the facade of a mad genius, there's a being searching for purpose and meaning. It's a loneliness that echoes characters like Satoru Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen, who, due to their overwhelming power and lack of worthy rivals, find themselves isolated in their own greatness.
I believe this is yours.
Oh, my student ID. Thanks for finding it for me, Gojo.
No. It wasn't me. My best friend found it. My only friend.
To fill the void, Megamind decides to create a new hero from Metro Man's DNA, choosing Hal Stewart, a cameraman who gains superpowers and becomes Titan. However, Titan becomes corrupted, turning into a villain even more cruel and selfish than Megamind ever was. This twist forces Megamind to confront his own choices and redefine his role in the city. It's in this moment that Megamind truly shines and his real complexity emerges. He hesitates, makes mistakes, is vulnerable, but ultimately decides to fight to stop Titan and protect the city, taking on the role of hero for the first time. His redemption arc is powerful and inspiring. From someone who lived to defeat, he learns that protecting and doing good is more important. The film subverts expectations by showing the villain winning, the hero abandoning the mission, and the villain needing to become the hero to save the day. The contrast with Titan highlights that, even though Megamind is a villain, he has a moral compass and the capacity for love, especially in his relationship with Roxanne. Their dynamic evolves from villain and hostage to a relationship based on respect, true affection, and partnership, where Roxanne helps him find his way. This depth, combined with his undeniable charisma, over-the-top humor, and unique style with clever jokes and funny attempts to be threatening, makes him a captivating and memorable character. The excellent cinematic execution, with vibrant animation, intelligent humor, a standout soundtrack, and impeccable voice acting, especially by Will Ferrell, enhances the experience. Megamind makes us reflect on identity and purpose, proving that a villain can be loved not for their evilness, but for their complexity, evolution, and ability to find the hero within themselves, becoming one of DreamWorks' most beloved and celebrated villains.
I have to admit, being good has its perks.
You know, you look pretty good in white.
Megamind!
From a complex and beloved villain, we now turn to one who, despite his eccentricity, has solidified himself as one of the most hated, the Toad from Flushed Away. This villain, with his showiness and resentment, represents superficiality and cruelty that few fans can forgive. The Toad is the main antagonist of the film, a green, wealthy, and ostentatious amphibian who lives in the sewers of Retropolis. His motivation for villainy is deeply rooted in a traumatic past. He was once the pet of Prince Charles, but was replaced by a rat and subsequently flushed down the toilet.
Rat. While the poor boy's head was turned, I was cruelly plunged into a whirlpool.
This event fuels a disproportionate hatred toward all rats, driving him to devise a genocidal plan. His actions in the film embody his cruelty. He steals a valuable ruby from Rita, manipulates henchmen like Spike and Whitey, and summons LaRun to assist him. The culmination of his evil is his plan to flood Retropolis by opening the sewer gates during a soccer game, intending to exterminate the rats and repopulate the city with tadpoles and toads. He tries to kill Rita and Roddy by capturing them and attempting to freeze them with liquid nitrogen.
Instantly.
There's a paperclip in my back pocket. See if you can get it. In the pocket, in the pocket.
In the climax, the Toad fails, being defeated by Roddy and Rita. Many fans consider him a cartoonish villain, with exaggerated theatrical actions that undermine his emotional credibility. His motivation, although based on trauma, is seen as underdeveloped and one-dimensional, making him a generic antagonist. The humor often associated with him detracts from his threat. Additionally, the inconsistency in his sympathy contradicts his cruelty, weakening his role. Compared to other DreamWorks villains, the Toad is considered less memorable and psychologically interesting, cementing his place as one of the most hated villains in DreamWorks history. Leaving behind the frustration with one-dimensional villains, we now dive into one of the most complex and, paradoxically, beloved antagonists of DreamWorks, Tai Lung, the snow leopard from Kung Fu Panda. He is not just an enemy, but a tragic figure whose story resonates deeply with the audience, cementing his status as an unforgettable villain. Tai Lung's journey is marked by profound personal tragedy. Found as a cub and intensely trained by Shifu, who raised him like a son, Tai Lung developed extraordinary kung fu skills. However, along with his ability grew an overwhelming ambition and sky-high expectations. The turning point in his life comes when the wise Oogway deems him unworthy of the Dragon Scroll, citing the darkness in his heart. For Tai Lung, this decision, coupled with Shifu's lack of intervention, whom he saw as a father, was a devastating betrayal.
You knew I was the Dragon Warrior. You always knew. But when Oogway said otherwise, what did you do? What did you do?
This frustration and wounded pride drove him to a path of fury, leading him to attack the Valley of Peace and the Jade Palace in search of the power he believed was his by right, injuring Shifu in the process. Many fans even believe he should have been the Dragon Warrior instead of Po, given his dedication and skill. His defeat and subsequent 20-year imprisonment in Chorgom prison only fueled his resentment.
I'm glad Shifu sent you. I was beginning to think I'd been forgotten.
Tai Lung is loved for being a worthy and formidable rival. His spectacular prison escape and return to the Valley of Peace established him as a real and tangible threat to Po and the peace. He is powerful, skilled, and intimidating, representing both a physical and emotional challenge that forces Po to transcend his own limits. The final confrontation between Po and Tai Lung is not just a kung fu battle, but a clash of philosophies, where Tai Lung's raw strength and pride collide with Po's resilience and inner courage. His ability to be a mirror for the hero, challenging him on every level, is one of the pillars of his appeal. His complexity deepens in Kung Fu Panda 4. Although his return is orchestrated by the Chameleon, who summons him from the spirit realm, Tai Lung retains his essence. Initially, he still questions Po's worth as the Dragon Warrior, criticizing his flaws.
Who are you and what are you doing with that staff?
This was given to me by an old friend of yours.
The Puffy Panda? Po might be an idiot, but he'd never willingly hand over Oogway's staff to the likes of you.
However, after being tricked and having his kung fu stolen by the Chameleon, and after Po restores his power, there is a glimpse of redemption. Tai Lung admits that Po was, after all, worthy, and bows in respect.
Maybe Oogway was right about you. You aren't completely useless after all.
He even carries the Chameleon back to the spirit realm, accepting his fate and recognizing Oogway's wisdom. This evolution, from pure antagonist to someone capable of recognition and acceptance, resonates with fans who value villains with meaningful character arcs. His iconic presence in the first film, his memorable lines, and his striking design solidified him as one of the most beloved and respected villains in DreamWorks. A reminder that greatness can come from unexpected places, and that even a villain can find a type of peace. An antagonist who, with her obsessive and exaggerated cruelty, has become one of the most hated. Captain Chantal Dubois from Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted. She is the relentless head of the animal control in Monaco, whose primary motivation is to mount Alex the lion's head as her final trophy, immediately positioning her as a villain with gratuitous evil and no real depth. Dubois is the embodiment of relentless pursuit. She chases the animals with a frightening determination, using every tool at her disposal, from ropes and poisoned darts to computers and scent trails. Her obsession leads her to escape prison and chase the animals across Europe in a series of pursuits that, for many, break the suspension of disbelief due to their implausibility. Her willingness to harm animals for pure revenge makes her deeply unpleasant. However, what contributes most to fan hatred is how her villainy is presented. Many see her as a caricatured villain, overly theatrical, which undermines her credibility as a real threat. The humor injected into her scenes, with her failures and comedic quips, ends up draining the tension she should create. Her shallow motivation, focused only on a trophy, and the lack of development in her backstory make her seem like a one-dimensional antagonist. In the climax, she is defeated and humiliated, sent back to Madagascar in a zoo cage. Chantal Dubois, with her blatant cruelty and lack of subtlety, fails to be a memorable villain for her qualities, but rather for her ability to irritate, solidifying her position as one of the most hated villains in DreamWorks. Wrapping up our journey through DreamWorks villains, we come to one who is undoubtedly one of the most beloved and complex, Lord Shen, the peacock from Kung Fu Panda 2. He transcends the figure of the villain for the sake of being evil, presenting a tragic depth and brutal elegance that make him unforgettable and, for many, fascinating. Lord Shen's story is a web of ambition, fear, and wounded pride. As the prince of the royal family of Gongmen City, he became obsessed with gunpowder, viewing it not as a tool for celebration, but as a means of power. A dark prophecy, foretelling his defeat at the hands of a warrior in black and white, a panda, led him to a desperate act, the massacre of the pandas.
She foretold that if Shen continued down this dark path, he would be defeated by a warrior of black and white.
This horrific act, driven by fear and the belief that he was altering his destiny, resulted in his exile, deeply wounding his pride and fueling his thirst for revenge. This complex motivation, blending trauma, fear, and a misguided attempt to control his fate, generates a dark empathy from the audience, who understands the origin of his darkness. Years later, Shen returns with a devastating weapon, gunpowder-powered cannons, determined to conquer Gongmen City and all of China, destroying Kung Fu in the process. His actions are relentless. He kills Master Thundering Rhino, takes control of the city, and confronts Po. What makes Shen so loved is how he becomes a catalyst for Po's growth. The confrontation between them is not just physical, it's an ideological and emotional clash. Shen represents Po's traumatic past, the pain of losing his family. He forces Po to confront his origins and find inner peace, turning trauma into strength. This hero-villain dynamic is rich, as Shen acts as a mirror to Po, a foe who challenges him to transcend vengeance and embrace acceptance.
Did you find peace? I took away your parents. Everything. I scarred you for life.
See, that's the thing, Shen. Scars heal.
Beyond his narrative depth, Lord Shen is visually stunning and charismatic. His design as a white peacock with elaborate feathers, regal attire, and exotic weapons like the gunpowder cannons creates a striking aesthetic. The imposing voice of Gary Oldman in the original adds layers of coldness and elegance to his brutality.
Find this panda and bring him to me. Find this.
He commits atrocities but does so with strategy and calculated coldness, never in an empty or mindless way. His downfall is not just a simple victory of good over evil. It's the result of his refusal to let go of the past and accept change, culminating in his crushing death by his own cannon. Lord Shen is a villain who, due to his complexity, crucial role in the hero's development, and iconic presence, solidifies his place as one of the most beloved and respected villains in DreamWorks. For many, he is even considered the best villain of the entire Kung Fu Panda franchise.